Welcome back, MTG Joe here, and today we're going to be doing a deck tech for a deck I want to try out when the new Dungeons and Dragons theme Magic the Gathering deck, Adventure to the Forgotten Realms, comes out this week. So what we're doing is just kind of featuring kind of an initial brew, something I want to try out, and this is a Rakdos Treasure kind of mid-rangey deck. So there's a few kind of synergies in the Rakdos colors with treasure tokens. Treasure tokens, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's an artifact that can tap and be sacrificed for 1 mana of any color. So what we're trying to do here is we have a couple payoffs, and then we have some top end as well. So kind of the key kind of curve considerations as we look at this deck is you'll notice we have a lot in the 2-drops and then a lot in the 4-drops. And what the 4-drops allow us to do is with these 2-drops, so we have Magda, Brazen Outlaw. So Magda, basically the first line of text doesn't really matter. We're not really playing Dwarf Tribal. But really, whenever it becomes tapped, we get to create a treasure token. And then we can sacrifice 5 treasures to search. In our deck, we search for dragons. So we have a number of dragons that we can tutor up with the effect as well. And then we also have Kalian, the Reclusive Painter. Yeah. I'm going to butcher some of these names. Apologies in advance. So when it enters the battlefield, it creates a token. And then if we spend treasure tokens to cast creatures, they enter with an additional 1/1 counter. So this is a way to kind of buff our creatures. So we have this ability. It can kind of turbocharge us to a bunch of 4-drops in the deck. And then what we have is Eben Death Dracolich. This is probably my favorite card from the set, or if not one of them. A 4-mana 5/2 flash flying enters the battlefield tapped dragon that we can cast from our graveyard if another creature died this turn. So we can get ahead on that. It becomes a 6/3 if we're casting it off treasure from Kalian on turn 3. Sounds pretty sweet. We have Immerstrom Predator, just another way to get big, a kind of an indestructible threat. We can sack our extra copies of like our legendary creatures. I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I wanted to keep some density of creatures in the 4-drop slot, and the Dragon's sub-theme kind of works out nice. This could be correct as Rankle, potentially just some more interaction. A couple cards I do want to try out here, so this probably won't be the final cut, but we have Zerial, Archduke of something that gets caught up in this name, but it's a 4-mana, 4 toughness, 4 loyalty Planeswalker, and really what this is going to do is buff up our squad. Our creatures get +1/0 in haste. So if we have something like Large come in, like the Immerstrom or Bone Crusher, it gets haste right away. It also just keeps creating recursive threats with 0. Devil's tokens that when they die, it deals a damage. And then the emblem is at the beginning of our first combat step, we basically get an additional combat each turn. It only needs 2 pluses. So they do need to both answer our board potentially on this. This is something interesting as well in like a mono red deck to see as the top end. Not as explosive as say like an Ember Cleave, but it can just keep putting out damage and it's harder to deal with than like just a creatures on board. We have Orcus, Prince of the Undeath, another card. So baseline, it's a 4-mana 5/3 flying trampler, but we can pay X additionally on its casting cost. And either it's a build your own massacre worm or kind of effect where we can actually Toxic Deluge is probably a better comparison. You lose X life and all the other creatures other than it get -XX, but we can also use it for its reanimation clause. You return up to X target creatures with CMC mana value X or less. So if we pay 5 additional mana, we can bring back like a Magda and a Bone Crusher as an example. So there's some interaction there. So something I want to try out, scales like a core, like a 4-mana 5/3 flying trample is a pretty decent stat line that can only get better late game. And we have a lot of ways to generate mana. We also have Goldspan Dragon. Goldspan doubles the amount of mana from our treasures, can be tutored with Magda, but this is kind of a top end that we've seen a lot of in standard at this point. And then finally at the top end, Lolth, Spider Queen. Another card I want to try out, but when another creature dies, you put a loyalty counter on it. Again, might be better in like a pest style or aristocrat style deck, but really what appealed me with this is we don't really have card advantage in this deck. So just repeatedly zeroing and drawing cards seems good. We can create spiders as blockers, and then the emblem just kind of bumps up the damage. If an opponent took less than 8 damage, they take that difference in damage each turn. So it's kind of just reach at the end of the game. One other card to feature from the new set, we have Forsworn Paladin, another Treasure Matters spell. And this is kind of, in a weird way, black ramp on turn 1. So if we don't have much to do, we play this on 1. You can pay 2 mana, pay a life, and create a treasure token. And then it's got a plus effect. So for 3 mana, target creature gets +2/0, and if we use treasure to pay for it, it gets Death Touch. The Menace Death Touch, it has to be blocked by 2 creatures, is kind of an interesting. So there's ways around. It's a good mana sink late game. Not quite Knight of Eben Legion, but a decent all-around black 1-drop. We have Devour Intellect, or we have Thoughtseize at home. So basically, target opponent discards a card, but if you use treasure mana to pay for it, then you can take whatever card you want from their hand that's non-lined. So another kind of mid-rangey threat. It's not like Duress, where some games it's great, other games it's terrible. And then we just have kind of like a removal package of Heartless Act and Bonecrusher Giant to kind of wrap it up. If we look quickly at the mana base, we're featuring a couple of the new creature lands. We have Den of the Bugbear in the D&D alternate art. Basically, these lands, they come into play tapped if you have 2 or more lands. But for 4 mana, it becomes a 3/2 goblin that whenever it attacks, you get to create a 1/1 goblin that's tapped and attacking. And then we have Hive of the Eye Tyrant, very similar effect, just in black mana. It becomes a 3/3 creature with Menace that exiles a card from an opponent's graveyard when it attacks. We don't have to play snow mana for like Frostbite. This allows us to play on curve. We might want something like Kroxa for this deck, but we're not really too much in terms of discard. There's some options like that. Woe Strider might be something interesting. Just kind of a recursive threat. But that's the deck. Let me know what you think. If I missed anything. I originally started building this as an aggressive deck, but there wasn't too much in terms of payoff in the 3 mana slot, and the 1-drops aren't like super impressive. So I opted with the amount of mana that we're generating to be able to scale up to 4 and 5 mana threats to close the game quickly. Like if you get Orcus down or even Death on turn 3 with the pump from Kalian, or Goldspan Dragon down on turn 4 with the pump, like a 5/5 flying haste that creates treasure that tap for 2 mana, seems pretty sweet overall. So this is a deck I'm definitely interested in testing out. Let me know what you think, if you have any cool deck lists, and we'll be playing a bunch of decks Friday when the set comes out. Thanks for watching, and have a great one.